Zak the Gemara, we're on Nun Dalet Amud Aleph. I have to find it. Rabbanan. A little less than halfway down in the wide lines. Rabbanan Azhara La'ishes Avav Minalu. Right? The pasuk of Eres Avicha ve'Eres Imecha Lo Yisegala. We said according to Rava, according to
Rabbi Yehuda.
Rabbi Yehuda says that the Eres Avicha is not referring to a literal someone who's Baal Aviv. Rather, it's talking about an Ashes Aviv. So that's where we have the Azhara for Ashes Aviv. But according to the Rabbanan, that it's talking about a literal a Baal Aviv. Eres Aviv is referring to the man who's Baal Aviv. Where do you have the Azhara for an Ashes Aviv? It comes from the other pasuk. Eres Ashes Avicha Leisegala, Eres Avicha. Rabbi Yehuda, what does he do with that pasuk? When we buy Lazharas, Lazar Ashes Aviv La'achamisa. That's coming to make an isser, like you were just saying, with his father's wife after his father died. So obviously he's not his wife anymore, but she is not his wife. She's not married to him because he's dead, but she still remains Ashes Aviv, and there's an isser Misa. Rabbanan, but what happens? And where did the Rabbanan learn that out from? If that's what Rabbi Yehuda used that pasuk for, Hahumi Sefer the Kronafka, Eres Avichahi. The pasuk ends off Eres Avichahi. So that's coming to tell you that it's adding on that even after Misavia is the Isser Ashes Av. Yehuda, Hahumi Bayale. What does he do with Eres Avichahi? Hahumi Bayale Misham Ashes Avat Mechaviyat Mechav Misham Ashes Ish. It's coming to tell you that while they're married, while his father is married to his wife, someone who's bar on his father's wife, the only chiyuv is going to be al teishes av, not al teishes ish. For example, like we've been saying, there's not going to be two chatas if he's born on such a woman. In fact, the Gemara, is that true? Is it true that there's only one chiyuv for a person who's bar on his father's wife while his father's married? Our Mishnah had specifically said that you're mechayiv for both. You're mechayiv too. So how can we say that Rabbi Yehuda is using that pasuk to tell you only chayiv one? Rabbi Yehuda had been chaylik and said by an aim, someone who's both imay and eishes av, that you only chayiv mishum imay. So you can't even say Rabbi Yehuda was not didn't see the necessity of arguing because he argued by the earlier case. Amar Abaya Palik b'Braisa. Abaya says no, Einachanami. Even though in the Mishnah we didn't mention that Rabbi Yehuda is chaylik, we have a Braisa, and there's a Braisa that says Rabbi Yehuda is chaylik on that case as well. Rabbanan Oynish Eishes Aviv La'acha Misa Minalu. We've said that. Hey, we used the pasuk. We learned out according to both both according to Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan, how you know an Eishes Aviv is chayiv la'achar misas Aviv. But how do you know the einish? All we know is that it's aser. How do you know that it gets skila? Bishlam Yehuda ma'isila b'gzeira shava. Like we said, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Eishes Aviv is hukash to our pasuk of aim. So we, like on the top of the bla amid, we had discussed that there's a hekesh. Gzeira shava, where we're makish Ashes av. And which we said was the most yumsa b'skila. So that will teach you the einish as well. The einish for an Ashes Av, everything is folded in together according to Rabbi Yehuda in the Gzeira Shava. Where are the Rabbanan going to know this from? Amilachahu, Eres Aviv Gila, the Mavakla Rabbi Yehuda Gzeira Shava. This words of Eres Aviv Gila that we made Gzeira Shava to the din of an Arab of skila, that it gets skila. The mavik la Yehuda l'gzeir shava mafkel inu la'aynish teishes av la'achamisa. That same pasuk that Rav Yehuda had said was mufna to make a gzeir shava, we're going to use that pasuk to teach us directly according to the Rabbanan. That's going to be the extra pasuk. It was extra according to Yehuda to be gzeir shava. According to the Rabbanan, that pasuk itself will tell you the isur, the aynish of eishes av la'achamisa. Rabbanan aynishli imay she'ene eishes aviv minalahu. According to Rabbanan, where are we going to know the aynish for his mother that's not eishes av? Where are we going to know that? Again, the Rabbanan were going through this long list. According to Rabbi Yehuda, everything is learned out from the Gzeir Shava. According to the Rabbanan, where do we learn out this aynish from? Right? According to let's put it this way. According to Yehuda, there's a bridge between the Einshim and the Azharas. That's the Gzeir Shava tells you from where the pasuk says that there's a chiv skila, and we bring it in to all these different various isurim of Eishes Av and Imai. According to Rabbanan, we have to go through each one. Where do we see the aynish from? So where do we know Imai that's not married to his father? Amav Shisha Brei Davidi Amakra Imchi Asa Kasav LeImai She'ein Eishes Aviv Ki Imai She Eishes Aviv. Imchi, he tells you that the aynish, it's not just imchahi that she's going to be chayiv, but it also makes it kimish eishes aviv in all respects. There's going to be both an azhara and an aynish. Okay, now I'm going to try seeing if my coffee is ready. Did you happen to notice?
No, I didn't. I was just
okay. I'm going to get a coffee. A lot of talking, and this next one you can't do it on an empty stomach. Okay. Zok the Mishnah. Habal hazacher, someone who's a man who's on a zacher, a mishkav zacher, bala behema, a man who's on a behema, but isha mavias a behema, and a woman who allows a behema to be born her. The skila, they all get skila, mishkav zacher as well as mishkav behema. In adam, fact, Gemara, in adam chata behema my chata. Now we know that the din is that not only does the man get killed, but when a man is born a behema, the behema also gets killed. The Torah says that directly. The Mishnah says first one reason, because it caused the person to be nechshel. Therefore, the Torah said the animal should get killed, which some of the Mefarshim explain that the animal we're concerned that someone else will be born the same animal once someone was niskal, was nichshal in his behema, maybe someone else will. But the point is, whatever the reason is why a takala, this is the way the first understanding of the Mishnah is, that since someone else was nichshal in this behema, he was over on this behema, therefore the Torah says it has to be destroyed. Davar achar, a second reason that the Mishnah gives, this is what the Gemara calls koloin. It's a busha. And such an animal should be walking around, and people will point to and say, "Oh, I remember that Shmerel was killed for being born this behemoth, so therefore we destroy the animal." So there are two separate pshatim. One, the first was takala, that it's machshel someone, and therefore it gets killed, or koloin, that it's a busha to have such an animal around. So Zacha, but we're going to get back to this in a while. Zacha minal. Where do we know that a zachar, a baal a zachar is chayiv? Dr. Mar, the Tanraban, ish prat lekatem. I think Zachar means someone who the person who was Niva. When there's a Mishk of Zachar, there's the man who's Ba and the man who is the recipient. So the man, where do we know that the second man also is Chayiv? The Tanarban Ish Prat Lakatan. Torah says Ish, that means someone who's under 13 is not going to be Chayiv for Mishk of Zachar, which we should just keep in mind. The Gemara later on, it's confusing. The Gemara later on is going to say there's a minimum age for the man. When someone is Ba on a man, if the man that he's being born, if he's a boy of less than Tesha or less than Shalish, that would not be included in the Isra of Mishkav Zachar. But now we're talking about that he has the person who's a Prat L'Katan, a Katan who's born someone is not going to be Chayiv. Asher Yishkav Zachar, Ben Gadol, Ben Katan. If he's born a Zachar, whether he's Gadol or Katan, meaning even if he's 12 years old or 11 years old, the Kuli Alma, that's going to be Chayav also Mishkav Zachar. Then we're going to have the Machlekes about whether below 9 or below 3 is excluded. Mishkav Isha, the pasuk continues and says, when a man is born, a woman Isha she Yishkav Zachar Mishkav Isha Magla Katav Shnei Mishkavis Isha. That's coming to tell you. Now the Torah had already said that it's bein kedarka, bein shaloi kedarka. I'm sorry, it's not bein kedarka, but shaloi kedarka. The only possible bia is shaloi kedarka. So we say mishkavei isha. That's coming to tell you that this mishkav that you have by a zachar is also applicable by a woman. That means that generally the rule is going to be that any bia, any znus by an isha will be chayiv both kedarka and shaloi kedarka. Now you're starting to understand why I needed the coffee. Amar of Yishmael. He says this pasuk of Mishkav Isha is said by Mishkav Zachar, and it's not really telling you anything about Mishkav Zachar because we already know that there's only one kind of bia by a Zachar. So therefore, it must be coming instead of, even though the pasuk itself is saying that the bia of a zachar is mishkavei isha, what it ends up telling you is that the mishkavei isha by an isha, it only applies, it tells you a rule by an isha, as opposed to telling you a rule by a zachar. The pasuk continues, mois yumsu, beskila. He gets killed in beskila. How do you know it's the misa of skila? Never kan demeim bam, but never by v'yadayni demeim bam. This is, we had in the Gemara earlier, that we learn out of Gzeir Shava of demeim bam, malal beskila, avkam beskila. Just like of v'yadayni skila, this also is beskila. The Gemara, oina shamanu azhara minayim. Until now, all we said is what the punishment for ba ala zachar is, mishkav zachar. What do we know? What do we see that the pasuk, the Torah tells you that one cannot do this? Where the Torah says this is the consequence, but what does it say you should not do so? Talmud Leimer, you always need to have both an einish and an azara. Talmud Leimer, zachar letishkav mishkav isha te'evahi. You shouldn't be born a zachar mishkav isha te'evahi. Lamadnu azhara l'shaychem. So the Gemara says, okay, this is a new pasuk, and it tells you that you shouldn't do that. Mishkav zachar is aser, but this is only l'shaychet to the man who's being bought. Azhar l'nishka minayim. How do we know that the recipient, the nishkav, where do we see an azhara for him as well? Talmud Leimer liyeh kadosh b'nei Yisrael says legabe mishkav zachar. I'm sorry. Yeah, it says, It says, Laitia Kadesha B'nei Yisrael, Liyah Kadesh B'nei Yisrael. Liyah Kadesh B'nei Yisrael, it's talking about a man. Not just B'nei Yisrael, but B'nei Yisrael. V'ayim Kadesh, Haya Ba'aretz, Asu K'chol HaTeves Agayim Asher Hayrish. And we make a Gzeir Shava, Kadesh, by Kadesh it says, Gam Kadesh Haya Ba'aretz, that Asu K'chol HaTeves Agayim Asher Hayrish. And so we say, the Te'eva is talking about Mishkav Zachar, and we say that will apply to a nishkav as well. We'll make Gzeir Shava tell you a nishkav as well. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. So according to Rabbi Yishmael, we learn out a nishkav from Gzeir Shava. From Kaddish, it says by Kaddish, by Gam Kaddish Hayava Aretz, and we apply that back, La'iyah Kaddish Ibn Yisrael. Rabbi Kiva Aimer, Ein et Tzarech. It's not necessary. You Aimer ve'zacha le'tishkav mishkav isha, karibei loy tishkav. Instead of saying loy shoichev mishkav isha, the person shouldn't, the pasuk used the lashon of tishkav, which is a more passive lashon. So he says that lashon that the pasuk uses itself is mashma. It doesn't just mean a shoichev; it also means a tishkav. It means the implication of the actual, the grammar of it is a bit unusual, and that grammar is mashma, passive voice that includes the nishkav. So again, according to Rabbi Kiva, you learn it out from the same pasuk that you learn a shaychev. According to Rabbi Yishmael, we learn out the nishkav from Gzeir Shava from Kaddish. Behema mina.
I guess the nishkav.
For the nishkav. What? I'm sorry?
And the nishkav gets punished as well?
Yes. The nishkav, he's doing it willingly. Or if he's a shaygig, then he gets being zachatas. Obviously, if he's an oinus, he's not chayiv. Yeah. I'm sorry, this is from your job. You think about this in different terms. So that was Mishkav Zacha. Behema Minalan. Where do we know the Isra of Behema? The Tanu Rabban. Ish Prat Lekatan. Again, the same thing. A katan who's born, a Behema is not chayiv. Ashi Yitin Shechasa Behema. Being G'dayla, being Ktana. By a Behema, there's no nafkamina whether the Behema is a G'dayla or Ktana, just like we said by Mishkav Zacha. Moish Yumsu Beskila. Ataim Beskila, Eni Alabach, is called Misa Moish Betar. Never can Tereg, Venem Alon, Ki Harag Targenu, Alon Beskila, Avkam Beskila. Instead of the Mayim Bum, it doesn't say the Mayim Bum by Behema, but it does say the Harag, so we make the same, we make Gzeir Shava. It says by Irani Dachas, it says Ki Harag Targenu Yatchatia by Barishain Alhamisa, and that's Skila. So we say the same thing over here. I'm sorry, not the Irani Dachas, a Mediach of Irani Dachas. Irani Dachas itself gets Saif, but the Mediach gets Skila. Ma'alam Beskila, Avkam Beskila. Lamanu Einish, L'shoichev. Einish L'nishkav Minalim. We learned an Einish for the Shoichev, because the pasuk says a Shoichev. What does it say? Lamanu. Zacha Shenirba Libahema. So where do we Lamanu Einish L'Shaychev? Right. So we so far what we're doing is the Einish, but this is all the Shaychev. How do we know the Einish of the Nishkav? We haven't even gotten to the Azhara yet. The Einish of the Nishkav, where do we know? Right. The pasuk said, Asher Yitin Shechvasei B'Behema. So that's a Shaychev, not a Nishkav. Talmud Loima B'Chol Shaychev B'Mehema Moish Yumas. The pasuk says twice a shaychev, so the second time it says shaychev, we give it to a nishkav. Lamanu einish bein l'shaychev bein l'nishkav. So we've covered the einish for the shaychev and the nishkav. Azhara minayim. Where do we know the azhara? Azhara tamalema b'chol tema b'hema leitit and shechvasa l'tamaba. So that lamanu. So that's telling you shouldn't. So again, that's a second pasuk to tell you the azhara. Lamano Azhar l'shaychev l'nishkav mina, and we didn't know the nishkav. Tamalem l'yeh kaddish b'nei Yisrael v'ayim v'am kaddish hayav haaretz. We make a Gzeir Shava again of kaddish from the same pasuk that we had used by the Mishkav Zacha. We also use for a nishkav by a behema, and we make the Gzeir Shava to tell you azhara for a nishkav. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. Again, he says that the lashon is. It could have said leititain leitishkayv. Why does it say leititain shechvascha? Again, that's a little bit of a passive lashon to also include the nishkav as well as the sheikh. Haba al hazachar. Now the Gemara is going to ask, what if someone is ba on a zachar, vehevi olav zachar, and in the same forgetting, in the same halama, he also had a zachar be ba on him. So he did both of these things. Amravo, l'divrei Yishmael chayiv shtayim, chadam elei tishkav v'chadam elei yeh. According to Rabbi Yishmael, who had said that we learn nishkav from a separate Gzeir Shava. So it ends up there are separate psukim for his shaychav and a nishkav. It's two separate isurim. So a person could be over on both of them as two separate isurim at the same. He'll have to bring two chatayis. Obviously, we're not talking about where he would be getting killed because you can only get killed one time, and they both get skila. Rabbi Kiva ein chayiv, but according to Rabbi Kiva, that he says it comes from the grammar of the word of nishkav, mishkaveh, which was a more passive lashon. It means both sheikhav and nishkav. It's all from one pasuk. If it's only one iser, leisishkav and leisishkav chadahi. It's all from one pasuk. Habala behema behemi behema alav. If someone's born a behema and a behema is also born him. Bravo, the different Yishmael chayiv shtayim. Yishmael yigmi one chadam ilay siten shechvasa v'chadam ilay kaddish. One from the pasuk of Shlei. Where was it? And one from the Gzeir Shava. Rabbi Kiva, it's all one thing. Abaya Amar, Abaya says, he'll say, he disagrees about the second part that we said. He's not disagreeing on both of these assertions that Rabbi Vo was machalik by Mishkav Zachar and Behema. He's only being machalik on the second one, on Behema. Even Rabbi Shmuel would agree only chayiv one. The chi ksiv la'yeh kaddish begavri ksiv. When the Torah says la'yeh kaddish, it's talking about people. It's not talking about animals. It's not talking about behemoths. So therefore, that can't be the la'yeh kaddish is not. You learn that Gzeir Shava to tell you a nishkav by a behemoth. Ella Rabbi Shmuel azhar l'nishkav minale. So then, where do you taka know the azhara for a nishkav by a behema? Nafkalei michol sheichav and behema moish yumas. We learn it out from a pasuk. Michol sheichav and behema moish yumas. It means in l'sheichav teyo inyan l'nishkav. There's an extra pasuk.
So why isn't it two? So then why aren't you chayiv two then? If you do have an azhara,
because it's the same pasuk. I'm saying it's not. The pasuk kol sheichav behema moish yumas is not different. How was that? What was the pasuk for a behema? Ish asher yitin. Where was the azhara? Einish l'nishkav. You know the man sheichav shein l'nishkav. The man ish ben sheichav l'nishkav is har minayin. Tamle b'chol mehema leisit shechvasa l'tamaba. L'sheichav l'nishkav minayin. B'chol sheichav behema moish yumas. Man l'sheichav teyin l'nishkav. Va'afke rachmanu l'nishkav b'lashon sheichav. Ma sheichav anish v'hizer. Av nishkav anish v'hizer. He's saying this pasuk chol sheichav v'behema moish yumas.
and it teaches both the nishkav and
This is the pasuk of the einish, right? So he's saying from the pasuk of the einish of a behema.
Yeah.
The way it's said, since the Torah says sheichav, the Torah says a sheichav, but it says since it's extra, we use it to tell you the nishkav. And he says from the fact that that was the way in which we learned out the nishkav, that tells you that there's also a azhara for a nishkav, but it's not a separate pasuk for azhara. It's sort of like we're saying that they're both going to be equal. From the way the Torah said the einish, that tells you that they're going to both have an azhara. So, I mean, it's always hard for me to understand this concept that there could be an einish without an azhara. Once we've said that there's an einish, how could it not be awesome? But we're saying this type of azhara that you're learning out from the fact that the Torah is saying that they're equal, the nishkav and the sheichav are equal. That's not considered as a separate limud that it will get its own bring its own chatas. Ma sheichav anish v'hizer, av nishkav anish v'hizer. Okay. Hanirba lezacha, person who was reveya azacha, hanirba levehema, and he was also reveya a behema. Amra babo l'divrei Rabbi Kiva chayiv shtayim, chadam leisishka v'chadam leisitin shechvascha. The two separate psukim. L'divrei Rabbi Shmuel ein chayiv elachas. Even the idil yeh kadishu. I'm sorry. These are both people who were the nishkav. The nishkav of a zachar, of a behema, he did in both in the same halama. He was nishkav to a behema and to a zachar. So according to Rabbi Avo, according to Rabbi Kiva, they're two separate things. According to Rabbi Shmuel, he's only going to be chayiv one. So this is the opposite of what we said before, right? Rabbi Avo had said legabi a nishkav and a sheichev by a behema or by a zachar. According to Rabbi Akiva, it's going to be one, and according to Rabbi Shmuel, it's going to be two. And over here, it's the other way around. Abaya Amar afilu divrei Rabbi Shmuel nami chayiv shtayim. He says he'll disagree because the dichsev kol sheichev v'mehema moishim. So any in the sheichev teil nishkav after achman nishkav v'losh sheichev ma'sheichev anshes av nishkav ansheska. So he's going to say that it's all coming from the same pasuk of, I'm sorry, it's going to still be Chayiv Shtayim because he said it's not, according to Rishmol, it's not coming from the Gzeir Shava, it's coming from the pasuk of Nishkav, the pasuk, the Einish that it says by a behema, which is different than the pasuk that it says by Nishkav L'Zacha. Amal. Haba al hazachar, behavi zachar alav, someone who's ba on a mishkav zachar, and he also is a nishkav by a mishkav zachar, and haba al habehema, and he's also ba on a behema, behavi behema alav, bein l'rabavo, bein l'abaya. Whether you're going according to Abba or to Abaya l'Rav Shmuel chayiv shalish, because according to Rabbi Yishmael, both the nishkav of a behema and a nishkav of a zachar are learned from a gzeir shava. So you're only going to be shalish for the four potential isurim. Rabbi Kiva, it's also, I'm sorry, and according to Abaya, even though he doesn't have the gzeir shava, he says the nishkav and the sheichev of a behemer are both from the same pasuk. So he would only have three isurim. The Rabbi Akiva would be chayiv shtayim. According to Rabbi Akiva, he's chaylik on Rabbi Shmuel, and he says it's all learned out, both the nishkav and the sheichev, both for a behema and for a zachar, learned out from the same, meaning by a nishkav and a sheichev on a behema is learned out from one pasuk, and nishkav and a sheichev of a mishkav zachar is also learned out from one pasuk. So there's only potential for two isurim. Tanu Rabban, Zachor le'asu by katan kegada. This is the part that I was thinking maybe I shouldn't put on YouTube. Tanu Rabban, Zachor le'asu by katan kegada. By a Zachor, someone who's ba on a mishkav zachar, a katan is not also like a gadol. We're going to see what that means. Behema also by katana gedayla. When someone's born a behema, it makes no difference the age of the behema. Mile also by katan kegadol. Now, before the Gemara had said, like we pointed out, that someone's ba on a katan, he's still chayiv. But this means a younger katan. Amrav asu bias pachas even teisha shanim kemen teisha shanim. He says that under a zachar who's less than teisha shanim, the ba on such a zachar is going to be pater. It's not going to be chayiv for mishkav zachar. Shmuel Amar le'asu bias pachas ben shaloshanim keben shaloshanim. He says no. The minimum age is 3 years old for being chayiv al mishkav zachar. The Ma'ikam Eflagi Rav Sabak Isa b'sheichav Isa b'nishkav. The Madam who says 9 years old says it depends on what age in which a zachar is able to be ba on someone else. And we say, for example, a gabi yavam, a boy who's over teisha, his bia is considered a bia that he's able to be ba on isha and do yibum. So similarly, it will be a zachar who is above Tesha will be capable, when someone is born him, it's going to be considered mishkav zachar. Less than that, nah. B'chol the lesser b'sheichav, lesser b'nishkav. Shmuel Sava mishkav ve'ishaksiv. The Torah says, kol asher beis zachar l'tishkav mishkav ve'isha. It's compared to the shchiva of an isha. So the shchiva of an isha is less than shalish, is not considered mishkav ve'isha. More than that is. So that's why that will be the minimum age for a zachar as well. Tanya Kavod said the Rav, I'll bring you a wire to Rav, that the minimum age is Tesha, Zachar ben Tesha Shanim, B'yoyim Echad. The age of a Zachar has to be Tesha Shanim B'yoyim Echad. Obviously, it can't be talking about a Zachar who's Ba on Mishkav Zachar because he's not yet a B'chuyev b'mitzvahs. And we said Ish, at Lafuke Katan. So it can't be the one who's being bought. It must be the one who's not talking about the shaykh, it must be talking about the nishka. A bo'al ha-behema, ben kedarka, ben shaloi kedarka. When someone's born a behema, it doesn't make a difference whether it's kedarka or shaloi kedarka. But isha mevietz ha-behema olel, ben kedarka, ben shaloi kedarka. The Brisa says there's no nafkamina whether it's a bo'al ha-behema or a isha that's being nirva by a behema. Ben kedarka, ben shaloi kedarka. Chayiv. Darsh from Nachum Bar Chizda. Be'isha shnei mishkavis ubehema mishkav echad. He says different than what we just saw in the Brisa. He says be'isha, when a behema is born, an isha, it means whether kedarka or not kedarka. And the behema, it's only one mishkav. It's only mishkav kedarka. Basko or papa adarabba. Isha de orchehi a mishkav mechayiv amidim achrina loy mechayiv. Since by isha there is to some extent a kedarka by an isha. So an isha that you're born the isha kedarka, maybe that you chayiv on, and shaloi kedarka you're not. Behem de lav urchi l'chayiv alal kol nekav v'nekav. The whole being born a behema is inherently bizarre. It's inherently lav urcha. So there's no reason to distinguish between kedarka and shaloi kedarka. So Gemara Tanya, the like Travayu, and we said our Brisa disagreed. Zachar ben Tesha Shanim Yom Echad, Habal behema ben kedarka ben shaloi kedarka v'isha mevias behema ben kedarka ben shaloi kedarka chayiv. Either case, you're going to be chayiv. Amalei Ravina l'Rav Hama'ara b'Zachar Mahu. Mishkav Zachar. There's a din. The Torah says Ayanida as Makairei Ha'era, that there's a chiyuv on by a nida, even if it's just hara, even if it's just negia or very bia, and that we learn from there to all other types of mishkavei isha, all types of znus. They're all chayiv with hara. What is the din of mishkav zachar? Is that also chayiv with just hara? Amar bezachar mishkavei isha ksebei. So we say legabe hamar bezachar. It says mishkavei isha. So just like by mishkavei isha, the din is hara is considered a bia. So too by ma'ara bezachar. Ela hama'ara bebehema ma. So the question is really by ma'ara behema. Does it also have the same din as a isha and a zachar? Amle meini yein la ra de ksiva gabe achos aviv achos imay the light shricha the eshkes la ra de nida. Like we said before, all the different ervas are hara is also because we learn out from nida, and it says as a makairei hara, the same lashon of hara by achos aviv, the sister of his father and the sister of his mother, that it says also a din of hara. And since it's not necessary there, today we in la ra de behema. We use it to tell you that hara by behema is also awesome. In fact, normally the cause of haradi they got chayve krisis. Why is it? This is chayve krisis. It's not a chayve mises achois ishta. Lichte ve gabe chayve mises. There are many isurei erva that are chayve mises bezdin. Why are we picking one that's a chayve krisis to stelzu to a behema to say tell you hara behema, which is chayve mises bezdin? Look, chayve mises bezdin, chayve mises bezdin. So he's saying, why did we choose to make an extra pasuk of achos isha and achos imay and achos aviv, which is only iser karas, and say the extra pasuk there is telling you behema? Why didn't we pick to say es makayrei hera by achive chayiv Mrs. Bezdin? Since being born a behema is chayiv and Mrs. Bezdin, pick that. Why are we picking this case which is not as similar to be the source? So Gemara, hayav kula krala drasha hudasi. See, Benami also did drasha. Since achos aviv and achos ima are really said somewhere else, and we use that part of the first part of the pasuk of achos ima and achos aviv to tell you a drasha, etzem it's drasha. So we also use it as the source for the hara by a behema, since it makes the whole pasuk just there for drasha. Someone who's ma'ara ba'atzmai, he uses his aver and his ba on himself shaloi kedarka. Amalei kavasta. He said to him, Rashi, the Meser Shas has a couple of pshatim, that basically you what are you driving me crazy for? This is not something that is capable of happening. It's impossible. Amar Vashi, Maiti Bayalach. What was the question? B'kaishi la mishkachasla. If his erv is kashui, if it's if it's kishu yava, it's impossible. Ki mishkachla mishamash meis. It's only possible when it's not kishu yava, when it's soft. Lamanda ama mishamash meis ba'arai is potter, hacha potter. So according to Mandama that says b'chlal that mishamash meis is always not chayiv. So there's also going to be potter. You can't be. It's not any worse. Ulamanda ama chayiv hacha machayiv tarti. Over here, you should be mechayiv twice. Ashoichev mechayiv ashoichev and mechayiv anishkav. He should be mechayiv if he did it behelam echad. He should mechayiv twice because he's both the shoichev and the nishkav. So he's saying basically, if it's a mishamash meis, then it's like any other shoichev, and he should be chayiv. Sort of, it seems the answer sort of begs the question. It's just assuming that the fact that he's doing it to himself is clearly aser. It's going to clearly be mechayiv him to chatayis, even though one would have thought that the question is he really doing anything if he's the only person involved? I'm going to stop. Let's go a little bit. An Ovid Kechavim that's ba on a behema. What's the? We said in the Mishnah 2 reasons why the behema that was involved in the revia has to be killed. One was because of takala. We said since a person was nichshal, we want to get rid of this behema. And one is else calling. It's but the Mishnah didn't use that word, but it means it's embarrassing that people will always point and say that was the behema that caused this Jew to be killed over. So when it's a ovid kechavim that's born behema, what happens to the behema? The Mishnah gave 2 reasons. Maybe you need both reasons, and by a ovid kechavim, there's no culling. There's no embarrassment, not worried, or it's either behema Avcham is not embarrassed about it, or even if he is embarrassed, we don't care, but we're not worried about that. Or maybe just the first reason, takala itself is enough of a reason to kill the behemoth. Okay, let's stop over here, and we'll continue this subject tomorrow.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.